Okay, so in this video, we are going to be getting through lesson 1.1, and we're going to kind of intro you guys into the linear regression in your graphic calculator. So you will need that today. So you should be on page 163. You should have already attempted the warm-up because that was your homework. If you haven't yet, pause the video and go ahead and try it to see what you can actually do on how to make a line. Since that is a pre-req, we should be able to have some idea of how to make a line based on questions 1 and 2. So if you haven't paused the video to try it, go ahead and pause the video to try it. Okay, the answers you should have gotten are right here. So I'm going to go over kind of how to do them real quick. Okay, so the first one, I'm giving you the 0.25 and the slope of 5. Remember, slope is the same thing as putting m. It means the same thing. So I'm trying to go into my slope-intercept equation. What I like to do is I like to label everything. So I have my x, I have my y, and I have my slope, which means my thing that is missing is my b. When I go to plug it in, okay, I'm going to plug in my x, my y, and my b. So my y is 5, my m is 5, now my x is 2. I don't have my b. So 5 times 2 gets me to 10. To get b by itself, do the opposite to get rid of it. So I'm going to subtract 10 to get negative 5. Okay, but that's not something I can graph. That is not a line. So we go back to our slope-intercept equation and put in the slope and the intercept. Okay, so my slope for my original was 5, and my intercept was negative 5. Okay, you could put plus negative 5. We just like to see it as a minus 5. Okay, the other question then gives you the points 5, 2 and 3, 8, which means we have to find the slope first. So your slope equation that you're going to have to memorize is this: the change in y or the change in x. Your rise, that's your y values, and your run, your x values. Okay, what I like to do first is I like to label all my parts: x1, y1, x2, y2, because then it's a lot easier to fill in. So there's always minus signs here, so I like to fill that in. So all I have to do is fill in my numbers. My y2 is 8, my y1 is 2, x2 is 3, x1 is 5. So 8 minus 2 gets me to 6. 3 minus 5 gets me to negative 2. I'm going to divide them, I get negative 3. Okay, so I have a slope. Again, that's not a full equation. So I'm going to pick a point. Then we're back to like what we were doing for number 1. I have my slope and I have my point. It doesn't matter which point you pick. It's going to give you the same answer regardless. So I'm going to put my x and my y, and I'm going to fill it in. So my y value is 2, my m is negative 3, my x value is 5, and we're going to solve for b. So negative 3 times 5 is negative 15. To get rid of it, we need to add 15. So I get 17. But again, that's not an equation of a line. So when I go back and rewrite it, I put my y equals my m plus my b. That is an equation of a line of something I can graph. So the next thing I want you guys to do is I want you guys to go to the getting started, and I want you to attempt a couple of the questions. We're going to ignore the spaghetti piece part, and we're not going to do that. So you're going to plot the data points. So your x comma y. And you're going to see if there's a pattern as you start adding the points. So after you get through all 5 points, see if there is some sort of pattern. Then for question 2, I want you to decide what is the relationship between the temperature outside and the number of customers at the frozen yogurt shop. So that's going to kind of represent your number 2 to represent both of those things in there. So pause the video, plot your points, and then determine, like, are we increasing by something? Does it look like something that we could make? And then answer question number 2. So go ahead and pause the video, try on your own, see if you make any mistakes based on what answers I have up here, but try it on your own first. Okay, so this is what your points should look like. Remember, you do your x value first, then your y value. So I would go for this first one, right 45, somewhere right here, and then up to 97. That's why his point is right there. And you walk the elevator, then you ride the elevator. So then the next one is 2555. I go right to 25, somewhere right here, and then up to the 55, and that's why his point is there. Same with 60. So 60 is here, and then up to 85, that's why his point is there. We've got 15, which is kind of this direction right here, up to 37, there's his point. And then your 100 is that dot in the top right here. Okay, so some things you might notice, the answers are going to vary. So you might have different types of things. If we actually tried to connect the dots, would it make a straight line? In this instance, no, it probably wouldn't. I could kind of get close to like doing a straight line this way, but then there's a dot that's kind of really far off and another one that's a little bit off. Okay, so if we tried to connect it, it'd be a little jaggedy. There's not a completely straight line that would connect them. Okay, so for answering question 2 now, use your linear model to describe the relationship between the temperature outside and the number of customers at the frozen yogurt shop. You could say there's a positive association. As the temperature increases, the more customers come. Okay, so we call that a positive association. So positive, or we're going to start to use the words correlation. Okay, the reason it's positive is because everything's going uphill. That's a positive slope once we start bringing the line in here. Okay, so it's a positive association. Okay, as my temp increases, my number of customers increases. Positive association, uphill. All my points keep going up and up and up. All right, so for our next one, it says use the full data set and the line that you approximated to write an equation that you think best represents this line. Okay, so we're going to pick 2 points and figure out which one is going to best represent our line here. Okay, so you guys can pick any 2 points. Just pick 2 points that you think you can make a pretty good line connecting everything. And I want you to find its y equals mx plus b. So you're going to find the slope first, do your y2 minus y1 over your x2 minus x1, and then pick one of those points, plug it in and solve for b to get your equation. We are going to have different answers because we're all going to pick different points. Okay? So pick the points you want. I'm going to decide. I'm going to pick the 1537. And then I want the high one, 100, 100. Okay, so first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to find my slope. X1, Y1, X2, Y2. I'm going to do my work on the side here because I got no space. I'm getting ready. So my Y2 is 100. My Y1 is 37. X2 is 100 and 15. Let me grab my calculator here. So when I'm typing them in, I type them in separately. I don't try to type it all in at once. Okay, so I'm doing 100 minus 37 to get 63 on top, and 100 minus 15 to get 85 on the bottom. So there is my really ugly slope. Okay, and then I'm going to choose one of those points. So I'm going to choose 100, 100, and I'm going to find my y equals mx plus b equation. So x, y, I'm going into this equation this time. So my y is 100. My slope is 63 over 85. My x is 100. Okay, and then I'm going to throw my graphing calculator up here so you guys can see how I type in that super ugly slope. Okay, so here's my calculator. So I'm doing 63 over 85. So 63 divided by 85. And then I'm going to times it by 100. And you could do the time sign. I actually prefer if you have fractions to put the fractions in the parentheses to say they're together. Okay, and then I could use the parentheses again, or I could do times 100. I actually think I would prefer that better. Anytime you have a fraction, put it in parentheses. All else fails, it will save you a lot of time. Okay, so 74.1176 74.1176. Okay, so I'm going to subtract him over. I'm going to do 100, and then watch what I do. Here's a little shortcut. So the TI-83s won't do the shortcut. You'll actually have to type it all out. All my 84s, what you can do is go up and grab. So I press my up arrow, and then if I press enter, it will grab that decimal, and then all I have to do is press enter again. So 25.88. So I have y equals my slope of 63 over 85, x plus 25.88, which means what that's telling me is I have a positive slope. That's 63 divided by 85. It's pretty ugly. That's the rate my points are going up by for the 2 points I picked. The 25.88 tells me like that's where at times 0 I would have my amount of people. So my amount of people would be somewhere in here because remember, B stands for your y-intercept. Y-intercept is where it crosses your y-axis or intercepts your y-axis. So that 25.88 means at time 0, I have around 26 people, potentially, based on the equation I made. Problem is, all of us probably made different equations because I just chose 2 random points. I could have chosen any points. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to take that beautiful equation that we made down there. Okay, this one right here. And we're going to find different values. So now I'm going to figure out, see if I can steal. Oh, I can't. Oh. I'm going to figure out, okay, well, how many people at 85 degrees, 115 degrees, and 10 degrees? Well, do I plug it in for the x or the y? So if I actually look at the graph, which is my x-axis? My x-axis is my temperature. My y-axis is my number of people. So if I'm giving you temperatures, I'm going to plug in to my temperature spot. So plug in for x. So remember, anytime you take something out and shove something in, you have to use parentheses. So I am going to be using parentheses when I'm plugging all this stuff in. So let me write my equation up here so you can see it. Y equals 63 over 85x plus 25.88. Okay, so what I'm going to do, y equals 63 over 85x plus, I'm going to actually plug in that x value now. So times 85 plus 25.88. So here's how I'm going to do it. So I'm going to keep that 63 divided by 85 in parentheses, and then I'm going to times it by 85, and then I'm adding 25.88. So if you chose 2 different points and you had a different equation, you're going to have different answers. So I have about 89 people. Okay, so I'm going to put 88 people because we can't make a person, we're not God. Okay, so I'm going to say 88 people for this one. I'm going to do the same thing with 115. So y is equal to 63 over 85 times 115 plus my 25.88. Let's figure out how many people at 115 degrees. That's pretty hot. So you guys can go up and steal this equation if you're a TI-84. You just press up, you press enter, and then all I really have to do is change that number in there. Otherwise, we are retyping it all back in. This time I'm typing it by 115, and then I'm adding my 25.88. So I have about 111 people. 100. So if you've been following along with me, I want you to try C on your own. Okay, so pause the video, try C on your own, and then I'm just going to flip up the answer. So go ahead and pause it and try it. Okay, so I went ahead, plugged 10 in, we got 33 people. So it says, compare your predictions with classmates. Did we differ? Are we the same? Why are we differing? Well, we should be differing because if we chose different points, we're going to have different equations we're plugging into. So we're going to have different amounts of people. So that's kind of what we're going to delve into. Like, okay, well, if I wanted a better equation where all of us are a little bit closer in our answers, how do we find a better y equals mx plus b equation? So on the next page, it says, you've noticed that estimating a line of best fit can give different predictions because it's based on what points you pick. Fortunately, with technology, you can create a prediction equations as well as scatter plots from tables of data. You just need to build a data table that has an independent variable and a dependent variable. Ooh, independent X, dependent Y. Identify the independent and dependent variable. What is the significance of those designations? So going back, what is independent, what is dependent? Okay, independent is always your x-axis, so temperature, which means my number of people is going to be affected by that temperature. Remember, independent comes first, dependent comes second. Independent X, dependent Y, X coordinate then Y coordinate. Says use a data table and a graphing calculator to generate a line best fit. What is the slope and y-intercept of the line and what do they represent? So we're going to do something similar. So we need our graphing calculators out and we're going to have to type in all of this data. So I would suggest writing this down somewhere, and then I'm also going to give you guys a paper that's going to show you how to do a linear regression every time. Okay, so I'm also going to show you guys how to plot points. So I'm going to go back to our data set right here. Okay, so we are going to get our calculator ready. The first thing you're going to do is press stat. Stat is right in the middle, pretty much by, it's highlighted in red right now on my screen. It is going to be right by that arrow. Okay, so we're going to edit our stats. So I pressed enter. Okay, so notice my red is on my enter, and it looks like this. L1 is your X values, L2 is your Y values. So we're just going to type that in. So I've got 45, 25. So 45. I pressed enter to move to the next one. You might be able to use the up and down arrow at some point. So there's my 45, 25. I pressed enter to go to the next one. 60, 15. 60, 15. And then 100. Enter. Okay, now I'm going to scroll over so I can start typing in this guy here. So I've got 97. So I can use my down arrow. So 55, 85, 37, 85, 37, and 100. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're just going to look at the points first. So we're going to have to set our window on what we want to see. So you're going to press window, and it's in the top. It's highlighted in red right now. Okay. X min and X max is what is the minimum on my X value I want to see, what's the maximum on the X value. Okay. So what I'm going to tell you guys to do is just pick like a couple numbers, one number below, and a couple numbers below what your X value, your lowest X value actually is. So if I go back here, I'm looking at these. My lowest X value is 15, so I'm going to pick a little bit lower than that. So I'm going to pick 10 here. Now I'm going to look at my X max. Okay, so if I go back to all my X values, my biggest X value is 100. I want to do a little more than that, so I'm going to pick 105 here. Now, you don't touch the scales for now. We're going to do all of our Y values, so same thing. So if I look at my Y values now, my lowest one is 37. So I'm going to do like a little bit below that. I'm going to do 32. Okay, my Y max is going to be 100 here. So I'm going to match that and do 105. Now we have to actually say, hey, I want to plot these points. So you're going to go to your Y equals where we were graphing things. If you have something in here, clear it out. Okay, we have to say, hey, I want to plot those points. So you're going to use your up arrow to where it says plot one, and you're going to press enter to turn them on. So now when I scroll off of them, it should be highlighted. Okay, then if I press graph, you should see all of those beautiful points that you should have plotted from before. Okay, the next thing we got to do is create our linear regression. So we're going to press stat. We are going to edit. Okay, so we can see all of our points. So now if I'm finding the line, I'm going to press stat. We're going to calculate. There it says linear regression for you. Okay, you can scroll down, you can press enter. I got to get all the way to calculate. And there is my beautiful y equals mx plus b. So I have to actually shove in the A and the B here. Okay, so when I write it out, let's go back to that page. Y equals, I'm going to fill it in. So my A is 0.686, 577, 5771, 812. Plus, now I'm filling in my B. So I kept my Y and my X generic. So 41.15, 41.1577, 1812. So I'm going to show you guys, we're going to look at that actual equation, okay? And we're going to see what it actually looks like if I were to graph it. So if you go back to your Y equals, we're going to type that equation in. You don't type the Y is already there. So I'm going to start with the 0.6865, 0.6865, 771, 771, 812. X is right here next to your alpha. And I'm going to add 41.15, 77182. 77182. And now if I press graph, that is the line that is the best fit to go through all those dots. Okay? So that's going to be the one that's going to have the strongest correlation. Now what I want you guys to do is type in, plug in your 85 in for your X, your 115, and your 10, and figure out how many people is it going to be on this actual line that best fits, the average line that's going to hit everything. So pause the video, go ahead and plug it in, and then I will show you a shortcut after I pop up the answers. All right, so here are the answers you should get. Please try to use the whole decimal so we're not cutting people out of it. In my first example there, I cut off the decimal. Please actually type in the whole decimal, otherwise you're rounding a little too much off. But those are the answers you should be getting. So notice that our answers are a little bit different than when we just kind of picked any 2 points and then kind of went from there on it. We're taking off a lot more people than before. Okay, so our linear regression is going to be our line that best fits that we're going to kind of use. So you are going to have to memorize how to get the linear regression. So make sure you do that. I am going to show you a shortcut to find these answers without plugging it in to check your answer. Okay, you still have to show work on the test, but this is a great way for you to check your answer, especially when you move on to IM2 and IM3. Okay, so let's say I wanted to plug in 85 for my X. I still have this in here. I'm going to press second, and then this trace button. This trace button tells me all the different things I can do with the graph. Okay, I can trace a value, I can find a 0, which you'll learn about eventually. You can find a minimum point, you can find a maximum point, you can find where 2 lines hit each other, and then you will probably never get to 6 or 7, so ignore that. So I want to find a specific value. So the value, notice it says X equals. It only works for X equals. Okay? I want to find a specific value for 85. So if I press 85, type it in there, that is how we get our 99 people. So if I do this again with my next one, I want to second trace, calculate the value for 115 degrees. Oop, that one goes outside of my range there. Okay, let's try our 10. Okay, our 10, there's my 48 people. Okay, my 115 didn't work because it was outside of the range of my window. It couldn't see it, so it didn't like that. I would have to readjust my window to get the 115 answer. Okay, so that's why he didn't like it. That's why he said the error in there. Okay, another thing you could also do is look at your table. So if you press second and then graph, notice it says table right above it. You can literally scroll all the way. There's my 10 right there. That's how many people. And then I could keep scrolling and get answers that way as well. So there are some options for you guys to kind of check your answers as well. Okay, we are going to skip the next page where it talks about least squares method and so on and so forth. And then you will have another video for 1.2.